Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast. I'm John Haskell, and I am here with Emilie Hopson today. How are you, Emilie?
I'm great, John. I'm happy to be here.
Good. Well, I'm excited to have you here. We're going to talk about delegation today. Emilie, as you know, is our HR specialist, human resources. She is the one that makes all of our lives better. So let's talk about delegation and why it's so hard. Tell me about that.
To me, making time when you don't have it is the big thing for today. And I think it's one of the things that most leaders struggle with the most. You know, we talk a lot about hiring, employee relations, but when it comes down to it, after they're trained, delegating is frustrating. I don't know if you've ever felt that.
Oh, man. So maybe explain a little about what delegation is, and then we'll get more into the details of it.
So, delegation is one of the things that sounds really simple, but it becomes extremely frustrating. And I don't think it's when leaders, they're not unwilling to delegate, but they struggle because they don't trust the results yet. So, in reality, everybody knows they need to delegate. Every business owner, every CEO, every leader, you know that you have to delegate. But the reality is, you can do the task faster yourself. Explaining things takes time. Correcting mistakes takes time. And checking people's work takes time. And all of it feels like time that you just don't have. So it's easier to just do it yourself. But that's the real delegation trap that a lot of leaders fall into. And so when you become the center of every decision and every task, the business can only grow as fast as you can personally work.
Yeah, and so that what we often the mistake I feel we often make is we think that if we delegate things, it's going to make our life easier right away. And that is often quite the opposite of what actually happens, right? It's actually longer for me to teach my kids how to do the dishes and train them through that process than it is for just me to do it by myself. Is that fair?
That's fair. And delegation isn't dumping work. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about assigning tasks, assigning ownership, and actually getting your time back once you've done it. Some of the things that you and I are going to talk about today are some simple things that our owners, our leaders can do to get that time back.
Yep. Awesome. So where should we start? Are we best to start by delegating the CEO role in our company and work up from there?
No. I think where we're going to start is understanding the difference between assigning tasks and actually transferring ownership. So when you assign a task, it sounds like, hey, I need you to go fill up the water trough. That's assigning a task. Ownership, which is the difference, is you own the process and I expect this outcome. So the difference from what I just said would be I need you to fill up the water trough and I expect our cattle to not run out of water ever. A little bit of an extreme example, but I've then transferred the ownership of cattle not running out of water to you.
Yep. So instead of a gopher type job, it's an ownership job.
Yep. It all hinges around transferring ownership, and there's three key components to delegating that if we can get our leaders and our owners to remember these three things when they're assigning tasks, it's going to make life easier. The first is responsibility. So the person you're delegating to has to know that the task is their job, it's part of their job. The second piece is authority. You have to allow the person to do it in their own way within reason, right? You can skin a cat a million different ways. And then also when they're going to do a task, things are going to come up that weren't quite expected. And so you have to give them the authority to adjust on the fly.
Whereas if I've just got a gopher running back and forth for things, I say, go get me the red pencil, and they see that the faucet's on at the wrong time, there's a decision to be made. The gopher doesn't necessarily make a decision. They just go grab the red pencil and come back.
Right. You need to give them that authority to make decisions on the fly. And then the third piece of it, when you're transferring ownership to delegate, is the accountability. If you don't assign the responsibility and authority without the accountability, they're going to miss the boat. And so when I say assign them accountability, that means that they know they own the outcome, they own the result.
Okay. So if the water trough is not full one day, it's not because I didn't tell them to go fill it. It's not because something's broken. It's because they fell down on the job.
Correct.
Because if something's broken, they're responsible to fix it or let me know.
That's exactly right. And if somebody has, so part one, if they've got responsibility, but they don't have part two, authority, they're going to get stuck because things are going to happen. It's life. If we have the authority, but no accountability, things are just going to fall apart because nobody's owning the results. So, real delegation, you have to have all three: responsibility, authority, and accountability.
Yep. Very good. All right. How does this process start? Is there a progression to it? You don't just start with ownership, right?
Nope. There's something that I like to call the delegation ladder. And the resource that I want to point everyone to today, there's a phenomenal YouTube video out there by David Marquette, and it's called Greatness. And he talks about when he was a leader for some in the Navy. And if the video is not enough, he actually wrote the book, and the book is called Turn the Ship Around. Just a phenomenal video, phenomenal resource, and it works through this delegation ladder idea. And it's not everything should be owned immediately. People have to grow into it. And so, kind of step one with your new hire is just that go for work, is exactly what you talked about. Go do this. But eventually, we want our employees to work up to that step five or that last step where they're the experienced employee and they get to make the decisions because you've given them the responsibility, the accountability, and the authority.
Yeah, and I just finished that book up based on your recommendation. Excellent book, really a good read. And he's talking about situations where the consequences of things being done incorrectly are high. It's high stakes, right? We're on a nuclear sub, and things have to go well, and they have to happen in a very coordinated fashion. And it's fascinating to me how getting that out of the command and control type approach into more of a stewardship approach really works really, really well.
Yeah. If you don't get inspired watching that YouTube video, we need to get a shock to the veins, because if you watch that greatness video, you are like ready to roll. So it's a great thing to watch at 7 a.m. when you're gonna
Yep.
go and
Jump
get
into a
going
whole
for the
team
day.
of people that need help. Good.
That's exactly right.
Excellent. And again, I've used the example many times, but I feel like right now with my kids, it's the perfect practice arena. And that anybody that has children, especially if they're, in that, I don't know, preschool, kindergarten, early elementary age, like it is the perfect time to practice on them because they can actually do stuff. And if I think carefully about what their capabilities are, they can be responsible for the outcomes. But it does take some training. It doesn't happen on day one.
No, it happens over time. Each of the levels, you'll see the progression. So from doing exactly what I say to researching report back, then you're making the recommendation, and then that once they've hit the top of the ladder, you own the outcome completely. You're making the decision, and you're just informing me. And that's where we want to get to if we're doing these things correctly.
Very good. Okay, excellent. All right, I'm a leader. I am overwhelmed. I have way too much on my plate. Where do I start? I want to hire somebody, or I've got somebody that I want to start passing tasks off to. What do I do?
So we're going to start with the most repeatable tasks. So I think a lot of leaders that I talk to, and John, you probably talk to, they feel stuck. They don't know where to start. And this thing is so big and overwhelming, they don't know how to take the first bite out of the elephant.
Exactly.
Where I want to lead people to is very repeatable, almost administrative tasks. That's where you start with delegation. If you, as the leader, have an employee and that employee can do the task 70% as well as you can, so it's not 100%, it's somewhere in the middle, maybe not 50%, but if they can do it 70% as good as you can, you delegate that task.
Yep. 70% of done is done, right?
It's done. That is correct. But because the goal isn't perfection.
Right.
The ultimate goal is capacity. That's the goal in this, right?
And this is the place I think where Marquette talks about you're not necessarily going to transfer the most mission critical task to this person, right? You're going to choose a task where good enough is good.
Correct.
Okay. Very, very good. Okay. Where do we go from there?
Yeah. So we really want to figure out those tasks that we can give out, the repeatable tasks, whether it's administrative, scheduling, coordination, because we want to free our time up so that we can actually focus on what grows our business. Things like strategy, talking to our customers, getting new customers, broader leadership responsibilities, and these big, we've all heard the analogy of the big rocks. We want to be dealing with the big rocks. We don't want to be dealing with the sand in the water that we're having to put in the cup. That's where our owners and leaders should be spending their time.
Good. Real quickly, that's a reference to Stephen Covey's model, where if you're going to put a whole bunch of stuff into a jar, you start with the big rocks, because then afterwards you can put in sand, and after that you can put in water. If you put all the sand in first, then you have no room for the big rocks. So in our Whitby work, working in the business work, if you're running around doing all the little tasks that need to be done, you'll never have time for the big tasks. And as you talk about, making big decisions, doing strategy things, those are what be type decisions, or working on the business things. And what we're really trying to do is free ourselves up to be a great decision maker, which is what leaders really need to be.
Once we've decided what those repeatable tasks are, step number 2 is we're going to talk about SOPs. So before we get into SOPs, one of the things I hear all the time when we talk about delegating, and complaints that I get from employees when we start dealing with employee relations issues, is micromanagement. So before we get into the SOPs, I want to talk about micromanagement a little bit, because you hear that a lot. The way to avoid micromanagement is simple. It's a system. You define the outcome, you set the deadline, you give them the authority, the 3 things we talked about, and then you simply check in at a prescribed time frame. If you do those 4 things, you're not going to micromanage, and you're not going to feel like you've lost control. You've just given very clear expectations, and the employee won't feel micromanaged.
We talk a lot on this podcast about profitability, risk, and decision making, but none of that works if you don't know your numbers. At RanchRight, we help producers build clarity around cash flow, margins, and risk, so the decisions we talk about on Ranchonomics actually work in the real world. If you want fewer surprises and more control, that's where to start. Book a discovery call today at ranchrightllc.com. Good. And those check-in points, the way you set the schedule for those, how do you think about that? Like, I'm going to check in with you in a year. Like, maybe if you're a new employee, I'm going to check in with you multiple times a day or once a day, or how do you think about those?
Yeah, it's different for every single task and every single employee, and you want it to be organic and in a flow that makes sense. If it's something small and not real relevant, because we're starting with these repeatable tasks. So if it's something small and not, it's going to kill the entire herd, we can probably check in at the end of the week. If it's something that's mission critical, we may want to check in at lunch. We may want to check in at the end of the day. It really needs to be prescribed. And so when you delegate and you do all of these things correctly, the last thing you're going to do is, all right, I'm going to check in with you at the end of the day, or I'm going to check in with you at lunch. And it's going to be a phone call, a text message. We talked about inventory earlier this morning with mine and Zach's employee. And that kind of deal was, hey, I had a conversation at the beginning of the month. I'm going to check in with you on the 15th. We got to have it done by the end of the month. So I'll check in with you on the 15th of the month. So that gives us plenty of time. So depending on what the task is, just have a prescribed time that you're going to check in, and they know that you're going to check in. Early in my career, I don't know how you were, but early in my career, I felt like that if I waited till the last minute to do something, I had all this pressure and then I had this wonderful outcome. Sometimes employees need that, though. They need that deadline of, oh, I know they're going to check in at 5 p.m. or I know they're going to check in at lunch. And so I need to have this done. And if you do that repeatable enough and you build that pressure enough, they're going to start having consistent work, and then they're going to have that muscle memory in getting these tasks done. So the check-ins is very important.
again, using my kids as an example, I went through this same exact process with Evelyn a couple of years ago. We're doing it with Brock, the 4-year-old. And he came in and said, okay. I said, bed's all made. And he said, yep. And I said, great, let's go look. And he said, can you wait just a minute? He ran in his room, finished it off, and then said, okay, I'm ready now. It's like, okay, the check-in is critical, right? Sometimes that's what actually gets it done.
Yeah, it applies the appropriate level of pressure to get
Yep.
it done.
Good. Somebody's actually going to come look. All right, let's talk SOPs, standard operating procedures then.
Yeah. I want to first say when people hear SOPs in their mind, they feel corporate, they feel bureaucratic, it feels overwhelming. But to me, all an SOP is a checklist. It should be one page. The really, really good ones I've seen have some cool pictures. But if you hear the word SOP and your skin crawls because you think that you're going to have to sit behind a computer and make a 20-page binder, you're not thinking about it the right way.
Yep, agreed. And we're thinking I think the way you and I think is the same. We're thinking bullet points. We're thinking, quick and easy, cover the high most important things, and then include details on whatever could be tricky. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Good.
Yeah, and SOPs should be living, breathing documents.
Correct.
If it's something that you made just to make and you put it in a binder and it's collecting dust on the shelf, you've missed the boat completely.
And there are a number of really good like phone-based apps and that sort of thing where people can have them with them. So Asana is an easy one. It's not a recommendation, but it's just a way that people can have those lists on their phone, could check them while they're out and about.
Yep. So a really good SOP answers 3 simple questions. What gets done, when it gets done, and what done right looks like. So if your SOP, your checklist has covered what, when, and what right looks like, you've hit a home run.
And I love what the right looks like as a picture. Like this is literally a photograph of like, here's what the supply closet looks like when it's clean. And, even if you don't understand all the details, you can at least compare your world to the end state, right?
Right. And I think it's good to note here, a lot of people listening probably don't have SOPs on their ranches or in their businesses today. And let's say you're really gung ho about this and you want to implement them today. One of the things that you're going to find is your employees are going to have a little bit of shell shock. And the thing that you need to explain to them, have a real transparent conversation, explain the why, but one of the things that you need to explain is SOPs are not about control and restriction. All an SOP is, it's about consistency.
Right. Repeatability. Yeah.
Repeatability. And it's so that we have a document and people can stop asking the same question over and over and over again.
Yep. Another piece to me that is very important is what happens if you're not able to be here. So for years, I've had employees doing work that I actually am not sure how they do it. If something happens to them and I'm the one that has to do it, I need some detailed instructions because I'm kind of a dummy. So please help me do that. And the same if you leave or get promoted or, we want you to take on additional responsibilities and we need to have an intern do this, for example, then how do they do it? So let's talk a little more about that. Should I be the one writing all the SOPs?
No, I think that in a perfect world, which there is no perfect world, the employees are writing it because they should be the ones in the trenches doing the work. They know the little nuances. And again, if we're delegating the task of writing an SOP, you have to follow these steps that we just talked about. So the real transparent conversation of, hey, this isn't about control, this is about consistency, whether it's moving polywire. Hey, can you do me a favor? Give me a handwritten 1-page, step by step. What's your process when you go out to move polywire? And I think the other cool thing is when I've gone through SOPs with people that have written them themselves, the magic happens when it's written. And I love handwritten. Let's start with handwritten. Like we don't even have to get a computer involved. But the magic happens when you sit down together and they walk through it and you're able to ask questions and all of the sudden it's sparking ideas, You find the missing holes. And honestly, Zach and I have talked about this a couple of times with some of the tasks within the fence company. All of a sudden, you start finding efficiencies. You know what I mean? And you can go, "Oh, you do it this way? Well, what if you did this and it made your life easier and it cut the task half in time?"
Yep. Thinking about the poly fence thing, right? Sometimes we find ourselves where we've walked back and forth along that same fence line 6 times. Like, boy, and if I can get that to 2 passes, one down, one back, I'm way faster.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And just having the simple conversation once it's done it's a fun way to really make sure that the gaps are covered and what done right looks like is good.
Good. All right. Let's get back to the why. I want you to talk about this from a leader's perspective. Why is this so critical?
The big thing here is without delegation, every business eventually becomes limited by the owner's capacity. So I don't think there's a single person listening that is satisfied with where they are today. I think everybody has a goal to grow the business. Everyone has a goal to expand their operation. We sit in these business meetings and we want to see our projections for 2026 and beyond. The only way that you're going to get there is to learn how to delegate and learn how to delegate well.
Very good. And just so everybody knows, you gave a great webinar on this, which is on our YouTube channel and on our website. And you issued a challenge to people at the end of that. Do you want to issue that same challenge today?
I love ending the webinars with our call to action, and it's basically today what I'm asking you to do. Identify one task. So once you've listened to this podcast, take a few minutes of quiet time and identify one task that you know you should stop doing. Stop doing it this week and start delegating that one task this week. Don't make it too big, don't make it overwhelming, and don't think that any task is too small. So this week, delegate one task. Whoever you delegate it to, you and that person write a simple SOP, let it be handwritten, and then this time next week, do a simple check in. Don't hover, just schedule a simple check in.
Excellent. Very, very good. And what can happen over time as we do this?
Over time, you start seeing it snowball. So it just starts with one thing, and then you've built confidence. You've built trust and confidence with your employee or your business partner or whoever it is that you're assigning this task to. And when you start seeing these tasks come together, all of a sudden your capacity frees up and you're doing the big rock thing. One of the quotes that we talked about in the webinar was from Steve Jobs. And he talks about it doesn't make sense to hire smart people to tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. When you've followed these steps, you've delegated appropriately, your employees are going to come start telling you how we're going to do things bigger and better. And that's when you know you're winning.
Yeah. Awesome. Very, very good. All right. Final thoughts before we wrap up.
I don't know if anybody listening is a control freak or feels like they're a control freak or they work for a control freak. But the one thing I want to say is delegating is not about losing control. It's simply about building capacity in your business, and it's going to be uncomfortable at first. Mistakes will happen. You can bet that mistakes are going to happen. And being a leader means creating space for others to succeed. So the goal is, the old adage, the goal is not to work harder or smarter. The goal here is for us to lead better and build capacity so our businesses can actually grow and hit those goals that we want to hit.
Very, very good. This is important stuff. And I think, just as you said earlier, most businesses are limited by the leader's ability to delegate. Most leaders are limited that way. Most businesses are limited by that leader that way. Again, I'm going to reference mention the webinar that we did here. It is on the website. It is on YouTube. Emilie, you are available for consulting services. How do people get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me at my website. So I've got a brand new website we just launched. It's ag-culture.net. Speaking of delegation, one of the fun things that we're doing right now on the website, I'm going to plug it here because we've got a couple of ranch right jobs up. I call it Agriculture's Most Wanted. And so there's a job board page on there, and I'm going to update that weekly. And these are businesses that are looking for employees. And it's businesses that I personally work with, I vetted, and I will stand behind. So if you want to get in touch with me, please go to my website, ag-culture.net. And if you're looking for a job, please go look at the job board.
Good. And there's a link to Emilie's website on our website, and there will be one in the show notes of this podcast. So, Emilie, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining us today. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, John. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to do it. You guys have a great day, too.
You too. Thank you for tuning into the Ranchnomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.